Next up, I'd like to introduce you to our first session of the day. Berlin was recently called the capital of continental creative community. But what does this mean in economic terms, and how is Berlin evolving into the music tech capital? Our first session will explore Berlin's unique mix of tech innovation, horizon-reaching philosophy, and musical creativity, and look at how the music industry will help create a record 2.4 billion euro in revenue in 2020. The speakers of this session will come up each individually. They are Dr. Klaus Goldhammer, Melanie Köppen, Dr. Andreas Görgen, and Steinunn Arnardottir. And each will come up one by one. There will be a Q&A at the end with all of them. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Dr. Goldhammer, who is the Managing Director of Goldmedia Strategy Consulting. Super.
Well, good morning, everybody. Everybody, once again, you got to dance here. I understand that. I'm very happy to see you, and I was asked to give you a short introduction about Berlin, the Berlin music scene from an economic point of view, and I try to put that together in some facts which you might want to carry away. So the first fact is that Berlin will become by 2020 the German music capital again, I have to say. At the moment, there's a total revenue of about 1.3 billion euros in Berlin. And by next year, this will grow, almost double to 2.4 billion euro. And then this is about a quarter of the overall revenue of the German music industry. And this is due to the fact that this building is going to be built. Actually, this is a new headquarter of Sony Music at Bülowstraße. And when they moved from the Sony Music headquarters on Potsdamer Platz to Bavaria, Berlin lost a lot of revenue, and now they're coming back next year. So this is going to grow Berlin to the new capital again in Germany. At Goldmedia, we run a service called Standort Monitor, which is tracking the creative industries. And this is a try of what kind of companies are here and what kind of revenues they're doing in Berlin in the music industry. And you can see that there are a lot of publishers making a lot of revenues, promoters are making a lot of revenue, and a lot of service providers, and this is where the tech and IT scene is happening. And only on fifth place, unfortunately, the musicians are based and generating their revenue. So keep that in mind, because I show you later on how many people are working in each of these kind of industries. Fact number 2, there are almost 2,000 companies in the Berlin music business. This doesn't sound much, but there are many self-employed and many other companies, but some of them are very interesting disruptors, technology disruptors, and even the music industry is now undergoing a lot of change due to, like, for example, AI applications in the music industry. Streaming has all gone through the roof, and I think we're going to discuss that later on, so I'll keep that short here. Looking at these companies now, which we have in Berlin in the music industry, you see there are loads of freelance, self-employed musicians, but they're only fifths in terms of revenue, and this is like the average problem we see there. A lot of service providers, and then some music publishers, some theater promoters and concert promoters, and you see that the ones that are making a lot of money are not employing that many people in Berlin. Fact number 3, 14,000 people are employed in the music cluster in Berlin. You might think this is not a lot. Yes, true. But in comparison to the overall number in Germany of 83,000, this is a lot already. And so you see that Berlin for musicians is a very lively and very strong cluster of meeting people, having conferences like that, and enjoying each other. But it's not only the music industry which is happening in Berlin, but it's also the clubs which are providing a lot of musical experience in Berlin. So we have 280 clubs and promoters which promote 58,000 events, over 70,000 artist performances per year. This is huge. This is really huge. And so this also adds up to the overall impression of the music industry or music scene we have here. Another 9,000 people working in the club scene, total revenue of 216 million. This is not a lot, I admit that, but what we always underestimate is the incredible importance of the club scene for Berlin or for a city in itself. Because, and this is fact number 6, there are 12 million tourists coming to Berlin every year. Out of them, 25% say, yeah, I come into Berlin not because I want to see the beautiful Alexander Tower, but they come in decidedly to see the nightlife and the music scene in Berlin. So 23% it's. And they stay for 2.5 days and they spend about 200 euros per day. And if you get into the math there, you end up with total revenues of almost 1.5 billion euros generated by the club and music scene in Berlin, by people coming here to enjoy the music and enjoy the experience, enjoy the club culture, and they spend about 1.5 billion euros for taxis, for restaurants, for hotels, and all that kind of stuff's happening in Berlin. This is huge, and this is important. This is only part of it, because as you well know, there are many people and startups come in not only for the great administration in Berlin, but more for having a nightlife to hang out with. So, 6 short facts. I'm summing up with strengths and weaknesses and ordeals and threat analysis, which was conducted not by me, but by the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm trying to condense that because I think it puts the things pretty well together. So what are the strengths, the economic strengths of the Berlin music industry? It's not only the Berlin music capital and the German music capital, but one of the biggest music hubs in the world. It has a great creative climate. It's highly attractive to industries like Sony coming back to Berlin and the creatives coming in flocks. It has strong networks of musicians and all the other industries involved in the music scene, and it has a lot of clusters here. And well, once again, the club scene is important as well. What are the weaknesses? I think there's still a lack of a general vision what the creative industries can do for Berlin, and that they are highly relevant for the image of the city. It's still, even the Chamber of Commerce says there's a complex administrational system which makes it highly difficult to cooperate, and there's not enough valid data available. What are the risks? Well, venues and spaces could be lost due to the strong pressure on the rental so that makes a risk that we are losing a creative-friendly vibe. There might be not enough support for the music industry, but this is, I think, always a kind of a crying baby approach and saying, we need more money. Yes, sure, everybody wants more money. But what are the opportunities? We could invest more into the music and club scene, that's true, more subsidies and more support. The cooperation between IT, startups, which we're going to discuss now, and the music industry could create new value to everybody. And the integration of the music industry into the marketing, into the city marketing, would be a viable and interesting approach, because so many people are coming to the city due to the fact that they want to see and experience music. So, and one other thing, it's very important that not the clubs are going to leave the town if no new people are moving in, but maybe we should try to think about that people who are moving in should take care of their night sleep and not the clubs itself. So securing the venues, securing the space for the music industry is a highly important thing for the future. Otherwise, we don't have any clubs like that anymore if the neighbors will start complaining that it's too loud in the night. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very happy and very fruitful discussion during this day. Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this first talk. We're going to have a chance to ask Dr. Goldhammer a few questions. Do remember to head on over to Slido, put in the hashtag MWM19, and put in your questions, and then we'll get them here up on when we have the Q&A in a few moments. Next up, I am thrilled to introduce you to the next speaker. She is the Director of Product at IDAGIO, which is the ultimate classical music streaming app. Our next speaker has worked in the music tech scene in Berlin for more than a decade and is building products and services for millions of people around the world. Give it up for Melanie Köppen. All right.
Hello, everyone. So I want to speak about my experience, how we work best together in the music tech scene. As it was said, I work in the music tech scene for like a decade in Berlin. I worked in New York, in San Francisco, Sofia, Sheffield. Basically, I worked with remote teams on a different continent, and I flew back and forth between different offices for securing FaceTime. So basically, that is a snapshot on what I've seen works best in business and how we can create the best outcomes. And so this comes from that perspective as employee, product leader, music enthusiast. My current work environment is that I work with freelance people in San Francisco. We have an office in Berlin and one in Bratislava. We have people on different schedules in the week. We have individual contractors, and I work remotely at least once a week for communicating between European cities. And also, I mean, as a product person, you work with basically everyone in the startup scene, designers, engineers, the music industry, professional classical music people, and so it's a mix of everyone. And if you think about like Adagio and classical music, you might think classical music and the tech scene doesn't go well together, but it actually does, because the joint vision of like creating a music app that is really specific to an audience that cares a lot about classical music and consumes that's the combining gel that basically brings the conversation together and brings out the best in everyone. And so what I found most inspiring in that, when we work from the tech side and the musicians comes to that together, that how it works is that music people and musicians and people that build software actually work and think in a similar way, right? We're all dedicated to producing something great together and create a nice outcome. So neither writing a song nor building a product works from a straight line from A to B. You work in a team, you need to come together, share the vision and share the set goal, have clear expectations, and then trust each other and their capabilities, that we can all bring our best self, and then we iterate, we see what works, what doesn't. So that is like creativity on music and tech the same. And why we are all here, right? It's these ingredients and these music and tech is all found in Berlin, and what is great that lots of people come especially for that to Berlin, because the creative mind space, you have space to explore and try things out. But what I'm arguing is that it is not just about Berlin, it is more about the shared vision that we have and that we all dedicated to the same things. So what we need to think about is how can we expand that, and how can we basically bring in the entire world to have work structures that are shared across the purpose more than anything. So what I'm saying is that creativity doesn't follow a structured process, and when we build products, we think, okay, what's the user experience we want to create? We think about what's the end goal, and then we have like iterations, we have engineering processes, designers and product think about how this works best. We test, and everyone brings their initiatives and their expertise to the table. And we need to give it time. So you need to do usability tests, you need to speak to users, you go off in tangents, you say this is part of it, this is not. And the same goes in the music, like when you write songs. I don't actually write songs, but I work with people doing that. So you don't necessarily know how you end up where you want to end up, and you don't know how the product will look like when you start off. So you need to trust the creative process that brings you where you want to go. And that all requires a lot of trust and flexibility. And I think the main thing is that you need a shared goal and the commitment. This is what everyone needs to sign up to. So like, okay, what we trying to achieve, and how do we get there? And a lot of that is about expectation setting and making sure we understand each other, we trust each other, and we give each other space. And why is that so important? Because I think in the current work environment, we want to avoid zombie workers. We want to avoid people that just come to work and do what they're told, and then they go home, and then they're happy. And we want to make use of basically everyone's brains at the times where it works best. So if someone is a night owl, that should be possible just to collaborate. If someone is working remote, that shouldn't be a problem. And we want to tap into talent that would otherwise be not approachable, right? We want to let people develop in areas that we might not have predicted. So all of that is, we bring out the best in people to actually create the best things. And so from a leadership perspective, I focus on creating the framework for that, to make sure that the team is set up in a way that they have the environment they need to be creative, right? So create an environment that enables trust, safe space, open communication, shared conversations, and then get out of the way, right? The message is, I don't want to tell them how to do their job. They know that better than myself. The key element is like, okay, what is our shared vision, and how can we motivate people to think about that in their best, like basically with the experience they have. And essentially, to sum it up, what I'm trying to say is that the music business and the music tech scene in Berlin can strive and keep striving, well, it does currently, if we think work arrangements that are flexible and speak to the needs of how people can work best. I think like classical music people, pianists, should be able to work with engineers inside the box, outside the box, and no one can tell them how they work best together. And so what we need to explore now and going on in the future is how do we create these niche and work environments that work best? How can we learn from great excuse me, from creative people to tap into the creative mindset and basically doing what we're best at, and then letting that creative process flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Melanie. Great, and we're still in the talk Berlin as a music tech capital. And I am thrilled to have the honor to announce Andreas Görgen. Dr. Görgen has an impressive resume and career. He has previously worked for the Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and Media, and since 2014 is the Director General for Culture and Communication at the Federal Foreign Office. He's also just really knowledgeable on so many levels, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation, to this talk. Please join me in welcoming Andreas Görgen. Yes.
Thank you so much. So I'm coming from a sector which is neither innovative, neither tech-based. It's called diplomacy. So excuse me if I do not fit neither to the economic approaches, neither to the tech approaches. I just want to share with you 3 thoughts based on what we call, or what you might call, or what Andreas Reckwitz called cultural capitalism, and 3 tensions we are dealing with in international policies regarding to the tension between the capitalism and the cultural scene. Second, the tension between a nation state and what we call multilateralism, what you might call international cooperation. And third, the tension between diversity and all those who think that there might be a homogeneous society. So first, about cultural capitalism. If it's important to put a spotlight on the capitalistic surrounding conditions, please have in mind that the higher you get on that level of cultural capitalism, the more you get into a project-based logic, the more you are alone in that world, and you have to fight against all odds. And the less you get a society involved in your creative issues, the more difficult it will be to respect, to guarantee the openness of a society we all need to have that space for creativity. And that's an openness with regard to the social conditions, with regard to all the diversity questions, and with regard to the respect of what is a cultural product. And there might be an opportunity in your conference to value the work which has been done by Jana and by Gemse, to bring the Berlin music scene to a political level. Not doing politics, but being open for the fact that there is something which we call a society, and whatever you do, it will have an influence in that society. And I thank the Berlin music scene and all the German musicians, from Frische Sahne, Fischfilet, up to Helene Fischer and all the others, that they are talking, singing, and producing something which is meaningful to that society. Second aspect, dealing with the tensions. So the first tension, what we do as diplomats, part of our task is to, in brackets, to sell German culture abroad. And this is a very old-fashioned model, meaning that culture is produced within the framework of a national state, and then you show your culture to other nations, and in a way you sell it. What we will see in the upcoming years is that there is an international market of dreams. So China investing heavily in museums in Africa, and that will have a high impact on the definition of identity. When you have a look on the investments of other Chinese companies, be it in the film sector, be it in the music sector, that will shape our cultural discourses. And we will have to quit the idea that a nation state produces culture and then you show that cultures to others, and via the exchange there is something good happening. It will change tremendously, and it will really challenge our understanding of what might be a nation state. Second tension on the diversity. Germany got an open society. We are grateful, and if we highlight the fall of the wall, we should not forget what preceded the fall of the wall. And the most important things had happened before the fall of the wall. That was the engagement of a society. That was the dreams and the hopes for a better society and for a better place to be. And this is perhaps, Berlin is perhaps a good place to remember that before the fall of the wall there were tremendous efforts with a high risk, and that we have to thank many people in the cultural sector, not only musicians, but also musicians, for what they did at that time, that it made Germany more open than ever before. And that openness is challenged, actually. It's challenged by those who think that Germany might be a homogeneous country. This is, with all the respect to the last 40 years, this is a bit the idea of a social democratic Swedish model, where a society, where politics guarantee a homogeneous society with a high degree of ethnic and cultural homogeneity. And this has been broken, this idea. And it's challenging us, actually. And I think there is a high importance coming from your work to keep our minds open, to which extent diversity is just the base for anything progressive existing in our countries. And this is also, and that's my last word, this is also with regard to democracy. The idea of democracy, that there's something of beauty in diversity and in contradiction. The idea of democracy is not homogeneity. The idea of democracy is to have open spaces, to exchange arguments, and to fight for better ideas, and not to have an overall consensus in all the time. So diversity is not only a challenge for a society, but it's also the basis for democracy. And all the differences, all the different energies, all the differences you might show in music, and all you are fighting for is to that extent a basis for a democratic society. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This next speaker works for a leading manufacturer of software and hardware for computer-based music production and DJing. She leads a team of 50+ people at Native Instruments, where she is the Senior Director of Engineering. Welcome, Steinunn Arnardottir. There you are. Hi. Do you want to come?
Hello. Should be on.
Let's try that.
Okay.
No? Not on yet.
Just say.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thanks. Hello. That's better.
Yes, this works. Great. So glad to have you here this morning, Steinunn. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
What is it like to work within the music tech sphere in Berlin these days?
I think it's great. I've been here in Berlin for 10 years. It's definitely changed a lot. Okay. But I think in a positive way, and it's also, yeah. I mean, when I first came, the main attraction for a person like me was definitely the music and the club scene. This has also grown into actually, being a huge community around tech as well. So, yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it kind of was more heavy on the creative side, and being in the company like Native Instruments and companies like this is, you feel like you're really at the center of it. Now with more kind of tech-like companies and more diversity in companies joining, there's also communities around tech, like meetups and a lot of conferences happening, and this is also what I find very fruitful. And it's basically, if it's a niche topic or a mainstream topic, doesn't matter, you can always find your community and really network and share knowledge. And this is really a privilege, and I think it checks off a lot of the life quality items for me.
Okay, that's very good. And what are some of the remaining challenges for a company like yours, and especially coming from an engineering perspective?
I think it's maybe it's due to this change as well. And I try to always keep a positive mindset towards change, not like it's always better in the past, but it is a fact that 10 years ago the cost of living was a lot less here. There was more space. This is, of course, we have the privilege actually of a lot of, there's a lot of drawing of capital, of a lot of companies here to Berlin, and this has definitely changed the situation with hiring people, and also, with our people, having higher cost of living, we of course need to compensate and make sure that they can survive. So I would say it's definitely, it's definitely something to think about. Also high competition for housing. We're trying to attract international talent, and this is what we really take pride in, that we have a lot of nationalities, but to support them in settling in. So I think it's challenge. It's definitely just changed environment, and I think the city has tried to do something also with this, but it's how it is, and also in infrastructure, helping people to find housing. Even we have a lot of young people that are trying to find kindergarten for their kids, and this is also what I find a bit of a pity, that we, for example, when people come back from parental leave, it's hard to find a kindergarten. We actually lost quite a few international people in the last year that just couldn't find a kindergarten for the kids. So I think these are all symptoms of things are going really well. There's hyper growth. There's a lot of people coming, but it's also the infrastructure needs to catch up a bit, I feel.
And is there something you'd like to see in terms of support from the side of the city and politics in general? Or also concretely?
Yeah, as I say, it's also, as I say, I think we all know that things have changed, and we know that there are challenges with also, cost of living, which also affects the creative community quite a lot. It's different from how it was 10 years ago, when a lot of people could have just really part-time job and make a living and be artists on the side, and this is getting more challenging, I think, for sure. So I think it's also just to acknowledge and celebrate change, but also not to forget our roots, and it's been mentioned before, to support our clubbing and music venues here, and not only just push them to the suburbs, but also remember what our identity and the original, where we all come from there. And the same with infrastructure and somehow helping people to settle in. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for now. So thank you so much, Steinunn.
Yeah, thank you.
And how we are going to proceed is we're going to bring up the speakers of this session, Berlin Music Tech Capital, back on stage. And we're going to have a quick Q&A. So Dr. Goldhammer, Melanie Köppen, and Andreas Görgen, please come back up on stage for a brief Q&A. Yeah, thank you. And I think I'm going to move here. You can move up a little bit further to the front of the stage. And I'm sure you've all been putting in your questions on Slido, and the Slido is full right now. Okay, so there are two questions. The first one is, how can politics work best together with companies and creatives? This question is not to anyone specifically, but maybe, Andreas, do you want to give it a go?
I think bureaucracy or public administration is used to work with the NGO sector, meaning the cultural corporations. For the foreign ministry, we would call this Goethe Institutes, IFA, and all that kind of stuff. And we are not so much trained to consider companies as partners in policies. We, for the last, in 2016, the federal parliament granted us with some money to enhance our activities in the field of creative industries. And we launched some call for tenders, also open for companies. It didn't work out very well. Second trial we made was to build up a platform together with the Siemens Foundation called Music in Africa. This kind of works out, and in the upcoming years, hopefully, as you know, we negotiate actually the budget for the next year, and if we can continue, we will have to reconsider the 2 pilot projects and to get in touch with the companies in order to get a better view on how to proceed. I've forgotten a 3rd pilot project that was together with the Republica, which is basically a private company. So financing international outlets. There's much to improve, and if you have any idea, I'm available for that.
Thank you. I think it will be very interesting to have a company perspective answer this question as well. How can politics best work together with you? Maybe this one is for you, Steinunn, or Melanie?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I answered, some of our challenges a bit earlier. So I think it's really, to how can we work together on supporting all of these people who are moving here for and want to be a part of this, this whole transformation I think we are going through. Yes, and to keep a dialogue and it's, I say, like some of these, I think there's been mentioned here, like, some of these are just, laws of the market and that's what happens. But yeah, how can we make sure that people can still be creative and live a good life and we support, that community and that's for us, at least at Native, really important because that's really where our roots lie.
Okay. I think I would add that it helps to have a dialogue in understanding each other, like what helps the companies and the creatives to do their best work, and how can politics almost be a almost invisible support to that, much more than a distraction, or like helping without limiting. I think that would be a good relationship, I would say.
All right, and then we have 2 more questions. The first one is, how could future support systems look like? So this is quite the open question. Maybe future support systems for Berlin as a music tech capital, or future support systems for creative. And I'm looking into your direction.
It was, hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you hear me? Can you?
Or
okay. Or I take this one. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Actually, I was afraid about the second question because it's so vague. I was like, oh, future support systems, like, giving some oxygen to the music industry. Actually, I think once again, the main important thing is to understand that the creative industry is one of the main drivers of making living attractive. And it's not about, Mercedes or Volkswagen, which is an industry, but also the music industry. And I think politics has understood that. So we have like a focus on creative industries and a lot of support in that respect. The second part is really something which goes into what Steinunn says. It's simply that the infrastructures have to work. So, I'm fearing to go into the train because I don't know whether I will arrive on time. And so how do I schedule a meeting? I probably don't take the train because I'm probably not coming in at the right time. And it's about housing, and this is a very important thing in Berlin for everybody here. It's about housing and venues and spaces and musicians who need room for practicing and are, you know, kicked out everywhere, or the rental prices for offices are going crazy. That is something that future support systems, keeping it vague again, could really simply focus on, making the infrastructural life of Berlin and Berliners and musicians especially easier than it's now. Because indeed, over the last 10 years, Berlin was so great because it was so cheap, and everywhere there were flats and office space, and now it's nothing of that is there anymore, and that is enough future support if that would come back again.
Okay. And we have 2 more questions. I'm not sure if we can get through both of them. Steinunn, the one to you is, are you thinking of hiring more people remotely to solve some of the issues you talked about?
We already did, actually, a couple of years ago. But yeah, we have, I didn't mention that earlier, but we have a development team in London and Los Angeles as well. So this was both, to increase the pool, to be in these places, but also, of course, to be closer to more users and you know, have more feet on the ground. So yeah, so that's definitely something that we do, and it's always considering. But it's always, you know, also speaking from the engineering side, there's always a challenge of making things work together, and especially if you have a large time difference. And it's you know, it definitely does work, but you know, ideally, like, you know, human relationship and human touch is also, it's not overrated.
All right. So we're running out of time, and these 2 last questions that came up here need a little bit of time to discuss, which is why I want to let you know that there is the speaker lounge right outside of this room called the Loft. And the speaker lounge is where you're going to find these 4 experts, and you can have a chance to speak with them in the next 15 minutes or so. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to our speakers, and another warm round of applause. Thank you.